Hi, Carol. I know that people ask you about finder's fees and what the appropriate finder's fee is for connecting people and whether they're ongoing. What can you break finder's fees down for people who've never interacted in that space?
Yes, I love this has become one of the biggest questions that I get. I've actually been has to be an expert witness when it relates to finder's fees, and all kinds of issues because a lot of times people don't hammer this out up front, and then there ends up being a lot of disagreement. So my very first tip is that if you expect a finder's fee, you should negotiate that up front and have it really clear in writing. And the same thing, if you offer it, get those specs down because otherwise it's going to end up taking something that was a good deed and you're going to be punished for it. When you think about the value of a finder's fee, it's really a great way to connect people that you know and monetize the value of the fact that you have a great network. It's not always appropriate. There are people who I do business with all the time. They send me stuff. I send them stuff. I just like them. I don't ask them for a finder's fee. A lot of times it's not even meaningful. If you took a small percentage of what they're getting out of it, it just wouldn't be worth the time to negotiate it. So you don't always have to do it. But if there's a big transaction or a big opportunity, the way that I like to look at it is how much value did you provide? Are you somebody who just said, hey, person, meet this person, something might work out? Or did you really help to develop the particular opportunity? Maybe somebody's buying a business, you found out about it, you let somebody know about it, and you really help facilitate that dialogue. Maybe you do a little bit of negotiation. Then you're acting in a role that's closer to almost like a broker selling a house or a business.
Right.
And so you have to kind of put it in that context. So if you were in an investment banker, you would get paid a certain percentage for representing either the buyer or the seller.
Okay.
And I look from that, so based on the size of the transaction, what would like a typical investment banker get paid? And then what kind of percentage of that role did you fulfill? Was it like 10% of that? Was it 25%? Was it something that the business would have never been sold without you? Or it likely would have been sold anyway, but you just happen to bring someone else into the fold, and what role you play. And so it becomes very much an art, not a science, but it has to be something that both people are comfortable with. And almost always the person who's getting the fee feels like they are underpaid, and the person who's giving out the fee feels like they are paying too much. And that's why you have to have this meeting of the minds, because it is valuable. I would pay for clients, if you think about what an affiliate relationship is, I mean, that's basically a finder's fee. And for Future File, we pay those out. They're usually in the range of 20% of a sale.
Right.
But again, I wouldn't pay if I was selling a business. I wouldn't give somebody 20% of what an investment banker made.
Right.
So you have to really look at the size and the scope and what value you're providing. And I've written a couple articles. If you search Carol Roth finder's fee, you can see those articles, including at entrepreneur.com, to get a little bit more information. And also, if it's a big enough deal, I can help you structure it. Because that's the other interesting thing about finder's fees, is that sometimes it's not just about the cash compensation. There are other benefits that you can get out of it too. So if it's big enough to be worthwhile, that's something that I can do as well. But at the end of the day, it's got to make sense for both parties. And since you're probably not going to be able to search a history of what kind of finder's fees were paid on similar deals, the best thing you can do is look at what like a broker was paid and figure out what percentage of that you feel like you added to the equation. And for something like a sale, like if I were to refer you like a one-time client,
Right.
I mean, that could be anywhere from 5 to 20%. But if it's a selling of a business, it's probably a fraction of 3%. So it's a pretty wide range. Did I give you any clarity, Catherine?
It's murky.
Okay. Questions that you have as a follow-up?
Well, if I was trying to sort of sense check it, so the larger the transaction, probably the smaller the percentage
Yes.
you're going to get, because people are going to go, oh my God, I'm not paying that much money for, but something like Future File that is a reasonably priced product, you're willing to pay that. Is there a rule of thumb for, something that refers to products versus services? Is that the way we sift it out?
So I think if it's a one-time, product, service, client, one type of a transaction, you have to think about what that person would have spent on a marketing expense, right? What would your marketing budget? Because that's basically what it is. You're supplanting marketing or advertising. So what do you spend? Do you spend 10% of your budget on advertising? Do you spend 15%? Do you spend 20%? If you're getting a really amazing six-figure client, maybe you'd be willing to pay 20% on a one-time deal.
Hey, if I didn't have to do anything and that person showed up and was a hot lead and converted quickly, I'd be happy to pay quite a lot.
Right. And so that's why it's very specific to the business, because there could have the type of business, with my product business, we only have so much margin, and even in our advertising budget that we can't go over. Otherwise, we don't make anything on the product. So that's one way to look at it. But if you're selling a business, then it's a separate way. The other thing with clients that you should clarify. So if I send you, let's say, a client, am I paying you on a one-time basis, or am I paying you for, as long as you have that client, or am I paying you for 3 years? Am I paying you for all the services, or just the one that I recommended? I would recommend, if you're the person who is paying the finder's fee, to put a limit on that. So limit the time frame to some reasonable amount of time.
First year,
it's just
first
too hard to
6
keep
months.
track of. Yeah. But, again, if it's additive to your business, always feel free. If somebody brought you a client that's like your biggest client, you're making millions every year, like send that person nice stuff for the holidays. Send them cashmere, send them a car, like whatever makes sense.
Right.
But that's what keeps people wanting to make those referrals to you, is if you take care of them appropriately. And so from my standpoint, if you're bringing me business, like you said, I didn't have to do anything for it, and it's additive to me, I'm going to pay you all day long.
Absolutely. I think that's a good way to think about it. I like the marketing correlation.
Yep.
And I also like, I think that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, and it's different, obviously, than if you're buying a business or buying a practice that has a very set structure in terms of how fees are calculated, whether it's a majority or a minority investment, whether they're buying the equipment, all those kinds of things. But from a pure just advertising, sales, client perspective, the proxies are a little bit more clear.
Right. Well, you could Google that. You could say, what's the standard fee for selling a business? And I'm sure that, that's easily findable. But,
yeah.
Somebody's sending me a career transition client, I don't know what to pay,
Well, now you do.
Yeah, and now I do. Thank you so much.
So if you have career transition clients, send them to Catherine, talk to her in advance, and she will send you a fee.
Absolutely. Thank you, Carol.
Thanks.